is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Newspodcasts.com.
The National Hurricane Center warning that Zeta is strengthening as it heads for the Gulf Coast.
We do expect this to gain strength as it approaches the upper Gulf Coast, becoming a hurricane with time, moving back towards the north and eventually back towards the northeast with time.
That's National Hurricane Center Director Ken Graham. The storm projected to make landfall as a hurricane Wednesday evening somewhere near the Louisiana-Mississippi border. Possible absentee ballot fraud discovered in Maine.
19-year-old Alyssa Dow is accused of sending in a forged absentee ballot and using the name of her former roommate. Both are punishable by up to 5 years behind bars and a $5,000 fine. Election officials in the state say they discovered the potential violation before the absentee ballot was processed. Maine, like the rest of the nation, is seeing a significant uptick in absentee voting this year due to the coronavirus pandemic. Tom Graham, Fox News.
A federal judge has ruled that elections boards in South Carolina cannot cross-check voters' signatures against their registration cards because there is no state law that allows for that. The Court of Appeals in Texas has ruled that voters who contract the coronavirus and want a last-minute absentee ballot will need proof from their doctor they've tested positive. In Maine, health officials investigating some unwanted ingredients in pizza dough.
Earlier this month, some customers found razor blades in the dough being sold at a supermarket, and a former employee may have been tampering with the product. The company found 3 other cases of compromised dough, this time with screws in it. It'll Be Pizza has hired a private investigator to look into a fired forklift driver. The screws found in the dough were not the type used in their machinery. The Portland Press-Herald learned the company had not reported the tampering to the Food and Drug Administration after an inquiry by the paper. Now the incidents have been reported. John Saucier, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Register now for the PBS Guam Virtual Challenge on pbsguam.org. The challenge includes 10, 20, or 50 miles. Remember to practice social distancing when walking, running, or wheeling. Download a distance tracker to accumulate miles. This challenge is made possible by our generous supporters, the Guam Daily Post, Community First Guam Credit Union, Bank Pacific, the Bank of Guam, Coast 360, Vantage Media, Cherry Media Vision, and the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Did you know your smartphone is one of the most powerful tools in our fight against COVID-19? That's why we're bringing you the Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app, developed by Google, Apple, and the PathCheck Foundation. The app works by letting you know if you've been exposed to someone who's positive. It's completely voluntary, and more importantly, it's anonymous. Add your phone to the COVID fight. Go to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like today's forceful repetition of the Second Amendment.
Well, thank you. I'll keep that in my bag of tricks. A forceful rendition of the Second Amendment, right?
It was with conviction.
Yes, sir. Okay, I've been working on the jurisprudence of the newest Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and the decisions that she decided while on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals dealing with gun issues. And I've got one here. I've got several. I'm going to go through one each day. In another criminal case dealing with unlawful gun possession, United States versus Moody, Barrett again wrote for a panel reversing a lower court order, this time on a highly deferential plain error review. Oh, I already read that one. Turn the page here. United States versus Briggs. Judge Barrett wrote a panel again reversing a lower court's gun sentence. There, the defendant was arrested with a large amount of drugs and loaded firearms. I already read that one too. Yeah, I'm going to go on to one that I haven't read before. That would be United States versus Cherry. Given a name like that, you know it hasn't been touched before.
That's a new one.
Yeah. She wrote for a panel rejecting an innocent possession jury instruction as a defense to a charge of being a felon in possession of a firearm. In that case, police recovered a firearm in the ground several feet away from the defendant, who had a disqualifying prior conviction. He claimed that he had knocked the gun out of someone else's hand and had only picked it up briefly before officers arrived on the scene and had his fingers crossed at the time he picked up the gun. Writing for the court, Judge Barrett emphasized that the Seventh Circuit has not recognized an innocent possession defense outside the context of situations like necessity or duress. And even were it to recognize one, the evidence did not support the instruction here because the defendant did not seek to immediately turn the weapon over to law enforcement as the instruction would require for innocent possession. Okay, well, this kind of stuff the judges get paid to do.
It just fell in his lap.
Yeah, he was just standing there being a law-abiding citizen, and all of a sudden it fell into his hands. Okay, so let's go on to Zemi Ikotny. And this is a piece by Alexandra Hudson. Family meals rebound in Wuhan virus era. The Wuhan virus pandemic has killed more than 1 million people worldwide, including more than 223,000 in the United States. It's wrecked the American economy and led to spikes in suicides and drug overdoses. Its devastation shouldn't be minimized. Yet, there have also been positive consequences, including for families, many families, more time for meals together. Conversations, games, movie nights, and bike rides. The abrupt slowdown in modern life has given people a chance to deepen relationships and create new rituals together. However, we have a correspondent in Guam who is not at all in favor of family meal times together, preferring to take his supper at a drive-through at any one of a number of restaurants on the island. So even USA Today is aware of drive-through Jack. Drive-through Jack. Uh-huh. That's the one. That's drive-through Jack. Very good, Jose. All right. So much for the daily news. Leah, let's all sit down and eat supper together. Early voting turnout an encouraging sign, according to the Post. Well, not according to me. Only if those people who turn out to vote know what they're doing and preferably vote for the right people, which means they've paid attention to Tall Tales and the analysis that I've done here in Tall Tales. But here's how the editorial goes. Not all politicians who made promises in the last general election on Guam kept their word. Where are my pearls? Politicians didn't keep their word? Clutching my pearls, I go on. We, the voting public, have been left with head-shaking moments and disappointments when the previous election's promises turned out to be hollow. Government efficiency has been lacking. Transparency was a past campaign buzzword that has fallen short in the execution. The gross receipts tax has not been rolled back. The government of Guam payroll remains bloated. Public education and public safety haven't been given top priority. And the plethora of problems we've seen before the election have been amplified in this Wuhan virus pandemic. Absolutely true. You look at the budget that the Democrats put in place. Public education and public safety were not priorities. And they'll never be priorities until the folks in office do this. Day one, we're going to enact a budget for the Department of Education. This is what they say they need. We've gone over it with a fine-tooth comb, and we think this is what they need, and we're going to give them that amount of money. Move to put the bill on the voting file. So ordered. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the education budget carries. And we do the next thing with the public safety budget and pass it. And after we've done that, then we go on to the rest of the budget. We don't do the whole budget at one time, so that if you wanted to add money to the education budget, a smart guy whose uncle is over there in the lazy boy chair, I refer to as the smart money, as soon as someone says the education budget is $10 million short, I move to add $10 million to that budget. And there's this chorus of people standing up, where are you going to cut? Where are you going to cut? And the idea is you give education its budget, you give public safety its budget, then you do the rest of the budget with what's left. Otherwise, take the word priority and go up to that section, the top of your keyboard there, where you can hit the strike through feature and use the strike through on the word priority, because you should never, ever say it again. Back to the editorial. But the failings of some of the elected officials have not kept the public from losing trust in the process and the system to vote for the next set of elected officials. If anything, there has been a robust interest in voting early. Instead of turning away from the ballot, more than 10,000 Guam voters have cast votes ahead of the general election. The 10,000 voters represent 18% of 55,542 residents who are registered, according to the Election Commission. We thank the Guam voters who have not been discouraged from voting. The early turnout numbers are an encouraging sign that many have not lost hope. I think they're also an encouraging sign that a lot of people are going to vote for Ken Leon Guerrero. because Ken has latched onto something. Every time Ken has a chance to talk on the radio, he gives a report about how long the line is at the Election Commission. If you haven't voted, this would be a really good time. Get down there and vote. Avoid the crowd on Election Day. Do the Election Commission, folks. Do the election workers. Do yourself a favor and vote now. So, of course, people that do that are unconsciously associating who in their mind with that message. So it's pretty smart messaging there, Ken. All right. It's not too late to vote early and avoid the Election Day crowd. The last day to vote early is Friday, October 30. Curbside voting outside the GC office does not require an appointment. Wow. If only my dentist would latch on to that. Residents who want to vote inside the GEC office on the third floor do need to make an appointment by calling 477-9791. GEC has provided more parking spaces for those voting in office. Voters can now park behind the Staywell building. GEC has been proactive in making it convenient and safe for voters, even in this pandemic. We thank the Commission's management and staff for their efforts. There are 6 days until November 3. For Guam residents who haven't voted yet, let your vote count. Well, it's okay, but no blue stars here. And I'm going to add my own editorial comment here of all the executive directors of the Election Commission that we've had. Maria Pangilinan is definitely the star. She's really good at what she does. She is on top of things. She's not one of those where if you ask her a question, let me get back to you. She seems to really be on top of what goes on in her organization. And she's very user-friendly. If you call, you can actually talk to her on the phone, unlike so many other government officials. And she'll actually relate to your question, give you the answer to your question in a very friendly manner. So good job, Maria. This is crunch time for you. And I suspect that there are some people out there, some tailgaters out there who would say, Bob is usually not one to be lavish in his praise of government officials. So coming from Bob, that kind of means something. And it's true. Okay, let's move on to the card. And here we have the card for today. I've got Ethics Commission versus Topaznia. Ray Topaznia. I've got Claire Young versus Lou. I've got Lou versus the Treasury. I can't resist chatting about the Women's Chamber of Commerce versus business a little bit more. And we had so much fun with it the last 2 days. So much fun, in fact, that it wound up on Jungle Watch. So if you're not a regular Jungle Watch viewer, go to junglewatch.info. You'll find an extremely informative website if you want to keep up with what's going on the island. The fact that they would run an episode from Tall Tales on it just kind of tells you everything you need to know about it. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Then I've got Tall Tales versus the Candidates, which will take up the rest of the show. Okay, Ethics Commission versus Topaznia. There's an article in today's Daily News. Officials say Gura never contacted them about conflict of interest. Now, I'm not going to read this article, but there are 8 senators that were interviewed by a reporter from the Daily News, each of whom said, no, Gura never informed me of an ethics problem with a Section 8 rental. And what the Daily News is doing here is this. The executive director of Gura that runs a Section 8 program, that would be a certain Topaznia, came out and said that 3 public officials are going to have to pay back money to Gura because either they or their relatives had Section 8 rentals contrary to HUD rules, which hold that local government officials cannot have an interest in properties brought into the Section 8 program. And Topaznia was really, really quick to name one of those officials. In fact, he named that one official over and over again. It's Mike San Nicolas, in case you didn't know. Yeah, he was very, very quick to name Mike San Nicolas. And then he went on to say, and there are 2 senators, too, that come within this. So the Daily News is trying to find out who the senators are by asking everybody. Now, one might have thought that the Daily News at the time that Topaznia told them he's not going to name the senators might have sent a sunshine law request, to Ray Topaznia saying, provide all public records showing which Guam senators have blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but no, it's kind of like catching the bank robber by interviewing everybody in town and asking them, did you rob the bank? Did you rob the bank? Well, there are 3,000 people in town, and so far 2,500 people have denied robbing the bank. So we're getting close to those 2 guys. We'll catch them yet. No! Yeah. Leave it to the Daily News. Okay. So Topaznia would not name him. There have been more than one story in Topaznia. No, I'm not going to name those officials. Again, it's kind of like my nephew, if you recall that story. Come on, boy. You don't have to worry about your doggy or your toothbrush or your pajamas or anything else. You're a big boy. Now, come on, be a big boy and go to bed. Uncle Bob, I'm not a big boy. I'm just a little boy, and I miss my mommy. If you remember that story. Well, that's kind of like Topaznia. First excuse was, I'm not going to name the senators because I haven't heard back from their lawyers. As though this makes it. I don't know if this may be some convoluted application of the Tello Taitigui rule, that you cannot use someone's name without that person's permission. Excuse me, not Tello Taitigui, the person whose name shall never pass our lips, right? Yeah, so this is his latest one. San Nicolas was named as having a conflict of interest, Topaznia said, because the conflict was already reported by the media years ago. Topaznia would not name the other 2 lawmakers, he said, because he did not want to influence the November 3 general election by doing so. Okay, well, let's unpack that. He doesn't want to influence the general election by doing so. So let's say we've got Senator X and Senator Y. Topaznia knows that if he said the 2 senators that are going to have to pay that money back because they did something unethical in the eyes of HUD are probably going to pick up an extra 3,000 or 4,000 votes because of that disclosure, right? He didn't want to help anybody. He didn't want to give anybody an unfair advantage. Is that why he didn't disclose it? Maybe not. Maybe not. Well, what's the other possibility? I didn't want to influence the November 3rd election by disclosing those 2 names because obviously it would hurt the chances of those people if the voters knew that they were potentially caught up in this unethical deal with HUD. So he didn't want to influence the election by influencing it in favor of 2 candidates. So we do have a statute on the books that kind of picks this sort of stuff up. It's Chapter 15 of Title 4 which is called Standard of Conduct. And this is what it says. This is in the whole Ethics Commission battery of laws. And it says, section 15204, no employee, that would be Ray Topaznia, shall use or attempt to use an official position to secure or grant unwarranted privileges, exemptions, advantages, contracts, or treatment for himself, herself, a spouse, children, or others. So by withholding those names, is he granting an unwarranted privilege to those people? Remember when I explained to you what privilege amounts to? And is he providing an unwarranted exemption, exempting them from public exposure, when he'd obviously done the same thing for San Nicolas? Is he granting them an advantage? I say all three. So that's fair treatment. He's violated that section of our ethics laws. Now, here's the hard part. Who enforces the ethics laws? Answer, the Ethics Commission. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story here. I was talking with this 8th grade science teacher the other day, and she said, Bob, could you help me out? I want to take my science class to see the Ethics Commission in action. And I said, the ethics, that's kind of heavy duty for an 8th grade class, isn't it? 8th grade science class? What's this got to do with science? Well, right now we're studying glaciers, and I've described glaciers to them, and I've told them that although they're made out of water and how big they are, they move really slowly. And since we live on a tropical island, I figure the Ethics Commission would be the closest thing that I could show them to a glacier. Yeah, the Ethics Commission has been impaneled since the beginning of the Leon Guerrero administration, giving the governor some stripes. I impaneled the first Ethics Commission, and they're still doing nothing. They have done nothing at all. So by the time they get in operation, obviously the election will be over, and obviously Topaznia will probably have moved on to something else. So let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations, check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are back on Tall Tales, just finishing up with Topaznia versus the Ethics Commission. He has laid out a clear issue that the Ethics Commission would be designed to handle. except the Ethics Commission probably isn't able to handle anything any larger than a coffee pot or any more complicated than a coffee pot right now. It's a real disappointment that they weren't able to get up and get running when they were in panel. And I forecast it. My sense when that panel was appointed, I said, this is not going to go anywhere for a long time. And the reason it's not going to go anywhere for a long time, because I looked over the people that were impaneled, and I didn't see anyone on that panel that had what I would call juice, the ability to make things happen. So, they had a lot of excuse, well, we don't have a budget, and we've got to get an office, and we got to do that, et cetera. A person with juice would have, first of all, told the governor, I'll serve on the panel. How are you going to support it? Because I don't want to be sworn in to a do-nothing panel. I want to start out working. And if the governor's answer were not satisfactory, goodbye. And the next thing a person with juice would have done after the panel was sworn in, give it a week and no action, be at the governor's office pounding on the desk saying, hey, you got to find us some space. You have to detail somebody to our office for help. We need some cash. You've got transfer authority. Give us some cash so we can hire counsel and get this show on the road. But the Ethics Commission that was appointed was more than content with doing nothing at all. And here's a classic ethical issue for them to sink their teeth into. So it brings us back to that old one about the tree in the forest, right? If there's an ethical violation in the government and there's no ethics commission to deal with it, was there really an ethical violation? It's kind of like, the one about the forest. If a man says something in, how does that go? If a man has an argument with his wife in the forest and no one hears it, is he still wrong? I think so, yeah. Okay, next item on the card here, Claire Young versus the governor. And this Claire Young was a guest columnist in today's Daily News. And she says, fast approaching are what was supposed to be the holidays that mean most of our families, friends, and neighbors, where we are essentially celebrating life, but instead we face weekly, if not daily, funerals, continued lockdowns, and possibly curfews and roadblocks in our future as this administration and majority legislature view the continued spread of this virus as purely the fault of the public. Thank you, Jama Manglona, for calling that to our... We would never have figured that out had it not been for Jama Manglona. When put into perspective, it's easy to identify fault. Going back to the beginning of the outbreak of this virus to the islands, the first lockdown was in fact a lifesaver, and I thank the governor for this. What was done after those first 30 days is why we have a second outbreak and continued spread of this virus. The practice of the entire world was to test, and test again. That was the whole world. Until you locate the source of the virus, isolate the sources, and treat those found infected. No attempt through contract tracing was attempted in the beginning, as she, meaning the governor, stated that only 200 kits per week were being ordered, and the limited quantity was insufficient to perform mass testing. Testing was limited only to those who demonstrated all 4 symptoms of the virus before being allowed to be tested. The claim was that she could only get in no more than 200 a week, but 2 charity organizations, not a government organization facing a virus outbreak, but 2 charity organizations ordered thousands of test kits and had no problem receiving their order and donated over 8,000 kits in 1 week span to GovGuam. instead of allowing public health to perform contract testing on a massive scale at a time when the estimated infected population numbered only in the hundreds, she announced open testing for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. I probably ought to correct that a little bit. Every Tom, Dick, and Harriet, regardless of symptomatic or not, throwing away precious test kits in a non-directional approach to locating the source of the virus, the containment and isolation of the virus. And then she goes on to say, she shifts gears a little bit, and she says, no one resigns at the height of a crisis, except for Gemma Manglotnia and Linda DeNorsi, the Director of Public Health and the Director of Medical Services at the Department of Public Harassment and Secret Services. No one resigns at the height of a crisis. No one. Unless their moral and professional ethics are ignored, and the only means of protest is their resignation. I assume that is what occurred with our public health director at this time, and if that is why she resigned, I respect that of her. I speculated on that myself, and I also speculated on the phenomenon of her electronic signature appearing on some rather heavy-duty emails when she said, I didn't sign those. And if I had, they would have come back to me. I did not authorize the use of my electronic signature on those emails that procured the 19th floor. She was adamant about it. But the governor set the record straight about 2 days later by saying what Linda meant was that she doesn't remember authorizing the use of the electronic signatures. She's not saying that she didn't authorize it. She's just saying she doesn't remember. Yeah.
Mother, nurse, and bus driver.
Yeah. Also about this, back to the main event again, also about this time, the speaker, through a charitable organization that had no difficulties donating 15,000 test kits to Guam, approached the governor, but was met with white paper reports and a dog and pony spreadsheet show, all misleading and all rejecting the speaker's proposal. There was nothing wrong with the kits. With FDA clearance and used properly, they would have been very instrumental in contact tracing. Imagine having 15,000 test kits along with 8,000 donated kits being applied directly toward contact tracing to identify the source of the virus, the containment and isolation of those infected at a time when the infected population was just in the hundreds. Would we have had a second outbreak? Would we even have had more than 5 early deaths? The spread of this virus is too widespread for contact tracing to be effective any longer. And I believe the only way out of this coffin we're being put into is through massive and, more importantly, repetitive testing. Testing needs to be in the thousands per day, not hundreds per week. Any attempt at a systematic, massive testing program has been met with denied.
Fine.
Has been met with
denied.
Yeah, there we go. So this is Claire Young, and after I read this, I thought, why, Claire's not beating around the bush. She's making some points here. And I said to myself, who is this Claire Young? So I did a little research, and I found out she's not a newcomer to this game. She wrote to the Daily News on April 20 of this year, April 20. The title of her letter is Mass Testing Needed If Guam is to Defeat Coronavirus. It is airborne and contained in droplets. It has a lifetime expectancy measured in hours to days and can survive on almost any surface, etc. China and South Korea demonstrated this virus can be controlled and managed until a vaccine can be developed, and that is through massive testing. And she goes on, and she lays out a pretty good case for it back in April 20. So she's not one who's saying, from the absolutely clear vision of my armchair, holding the retrospectoscope up to my eye and engaging in hindsight, because she was there. She was there way back then. So, Governor, you might want to see if you could contact Claire Young for a little advice as to how to go about handling the Wuhan virus, because she seems to have a pretty good handle on how it works and what can be done about it, unlike your approach, Governor. Okay, I've got somebody holding in the green room right now. I can't keep him there too long because he's no doubt taking time out from one of his top secret missions. You know who he is. He's by far the most dangerous man in the room. You remember that show Mission Impossible, Jose? You remember Jim Phelps, the white-haired guy who always capable of doing all of these really interesting. Yeah, well, we have a local efficient, local equivalent here. His name is R. Carl, right, R. Carl?
Yeah, Bob, thank you for taking my call again.
He's so modest and unassuming, isn't he? He wants you to think he's just a regular caller, right? Nothing special.
That's what makes him dangerous.
Guy, or in some cases, a regular bush.
Good cover, Carl. Good cover.
Yes.
But you're not fooling us. Go ahead, Carl.
Exactly. People need to be careful that when they're standing near a bush, because I might be behind it listening. Or behind, sitting on a park bench with a newspaper with eye holes punched out. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this issue. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I think in some cases, swab testing, of course, makes sense. If you're symptomatic, you want to confirm, is this really something that I have? Do I need to be concerned about this? But I saw a survey some time ago, and I'm sure many have been done, but this particular one found that over 40% of the people, almost half of the people who were infected were asymptomatic. So I think we're really, I believe many more people have been infected and have gotten over the disease and just had no clue. And I've got a funny feeling I was one of them, because there was a period where I had a heavy mucus flow, and which was kind of weird. And there was no reason for it. I haven't even gotten so much as a cold in I don't know how long. But I would be much more interested in an antibody test to find out if I'm have already gotten it and have gotten over it. That would really interest me.
Well, Carl, but it wouldn't be of very much validity, because I suspect that there are a couple people that could take on the Wuhan virus, and at the end of the infected period would come out stronger than they were when they went in. And that would be you and Chuck Norris. But go on with your...
I think probably you too, Bob. I think you would infect the coronavirus. It would be the other way around. I think the coronavirus is busy hiding from you. But yeah, if I was swab tested today and a few days later I would get the test results, what would happen if I got infected tomorrow? I mean, at what point do we do a test, like once a week, every other day? In some cases, I kind of understand it. If someone is around vulnerable people, elderly, or someone who's got is going through chemo and their immune system is very weak, I get that. You know, my wife went through that, so I understand that. But for many people, I don't really understand quite what the value of it is. I personally believe that the rate of infection is a function of the amount of testing that goes on, and the rate of hospitalization and even the death rate is a function of how bad our lifestyle is and our diet. Our immune systems are weak. We don't get enough sunshine. We don't get enough vitamin D. I think it would be much more productive for most people to get on top of getting their immune system in shape. And two of the things that were on President Trump's regime really caught my eye. One of them was, of course, vitamin D, and the other one was zinc, which I'm getting now. You know, I'm going to be ordering that.
Well, you know, Carl, there are those who have written about it who seem to know what they're talking about, and I've also gotten the same information from a medical professional. Vitamin D, zinc, and quercetin, they're all off-the-shelf medicines. You don't need a prescription. They're not expensive, and they do a lot for your immune system. But as I mentioned the last time we talked about this, doctors start out with the proposition that if they can't give you something, if they can't give you a prescription, it's something you got to buy at a pharmacy, or if they can't cut something off, they're really not interested, because anything other than that is not medicine. Dietary advice or things like vitamin D, to them is presumptively quackery, and they are not going to guide people in that direction. I've been told by medical professionals that most doctors don't even want to give you a vitamin D test to check out what your vitamin D levels are unless you're quite insistent. So I think you got something there, Carl.
Yeah, and to me, one of the things it indicates that we're kind of chasing the wrong thing in most cases, not every case, but is the fact that probably the most protected man on earth, well, one of the most anyway, Donald Trump and his wife, and over 30 members of the White House staff who get tested every day, who I'm sure, you know, try to social distance and wear face masks and the whole 9 yards, they became infected. So to me, I've adopted a very fatalistic attitude that there's more than a 50% chance I either have already gotten this or I'm going to get it. And the best, most productive thing I can do is try to get ready and not run and hide. If I was going through chemo and my immune system was extremely weakened and there's nothing I could do about it, I would take the run and hide strategy, believe me. Or if my mom was still alive, I would give her lots of sunshine, but I would also try to keep her away from relatives, away from people, and I would watch my health extra carefully. Or, you know, if my wife was still alive, she went through chemo. You know, for them, I would take the run and hide strategy as much as I could. But for most people that are not around vulnerable people, I think it's much more productive to research, take personal responsibility and research immune system. What can I do to strengthen my immune system so that this thing doesn't attach to me and infect my lungs and start a cycle where I end up in the intensive care unit and on a what do they call those machines, the ones that keep you breathing? The
respirator?
Respirator, yeah, because then from what I've heard, if you're on a respirator longer than 2 days, it's pretty much downhill. It gets worse, and it's not looking good once you're on a respirator. So we want to avoid getting to that point at all costs. So anyway, that's my take on it. I just tend to be very fatalistic, and you know, I've been trying to get ready as much as possible, getting sunshine, taking D3 supplements. I'm going to be ordering zinc soon. I'm researching about what else I can do, and that's my take on it. You know, anyway, I just wanted to throw in my 2 bits, and thanks for allowing me to chime in. I appreciate it.
Okay, our Carl, thanks a lot for calling, and get back to your secret mission. I'm going to take a short break, and when I come back from that short break, we will have none other than the other Governor Leon Guerrero on the line.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
We all need to fight COVID-19, and we need all the weapons we can get to beat it. Your smartphone can be one of the most powerful tools to battle this pandemic. The Guam COVID Alert Exposure Notification app can let you know if you've been exposed to someone who has the virus. Add your phone to the COVID fight by going to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download it from the App Store or Google Play now. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, Ken. I'm waiting for the intro. There we go. Yeah. I wouldn't want to bring you out here as just a commoner. I want to have the proper introductory music to herald your arrival, Ken.
I'm honored.
Well, you must be.
Well, I just forwarded you the latest or executive order from the other governor that extends the emergency, the public health emergency, for 30 more days, ending November 29th. Number one. Number two, suspending rulemaking procedures. In other words, anything that might inhibit or slow down Department of Public Health and Social Services' ability to respond to the emergency first declared in Order 03. She has ordered that procedures are suspended for the limited purpose and in the interest of expedient adoption and implementation of health enforcement regulations developed by public health.
Well, it's a little bit worse than that, Ken, because what she has done is suspended the administrative adjudication law, which is our fundamental process for enacting administrative regulations, where an agency goes through a process to develop a regulation, has a hearing or two, submits it to the legislature, where it must lay for 90 days unless approved by the legislature. And the legislature has to have a couple hearings, et cetera. So what she has done is cut the legislature even farther out of the process, because
that was my read too.
With no administrative adjudication law, then her ability to make law is even greater than it is under her magical powers in Chapter 9 of Title 10. So yeah, when I saw that, the first thing that popped into my mind was, will the 5 Republicans in the legislature be able to sleep through this round of loud music coming from the governor's office? You know, they have the Bob and Ray resolution that could have stopped the declaration of 30 days more of emergency, and now we're looking at another 30 days of emergency, plus the governor's enhanced abilities to enact regulations so long as they're arguably tied to this public health emergency. So we're getting to the point where it isn't that a part-time legislature that we need. We don't need any legislature at all. We don't need no stinking legislature. We got a governor. Right, Ken?
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it is we're getting one step closer to martial law with this. This reminds me of the law she tried to get passed back in March that made violation of any executive order punishable by a $5,000 fine or a year in jail or something like that.
Right.
This is close, and giving her the right. And then you see further on that on item number 3, 24-hour use of official vehicles by any DPSHH person is now authorized. But the funny part is the severability clause. The severability clause that says this law is legal and standing unless it's found to be illegal and not standing.
Well, Lou was in the legislature for a few terms, and there's a knee-jerk that says if we have a one-section bill that deals with one subject, we've got to put a severability clause in it.
Yeah, but this is the concern that I have on this is we're going backwards as a body politic. We're not going forwards. We're becoming less transparent. We're becoming less answerable to the voting public. This is giving them the basic information. They could write under this. They can say that and if you read the whole order, it's like 2 pages of justification. It said because 7 people in Mauricio tested positive, we're going to put a gate at the entrance, both entrances of Mauricio, and only people who test negative will be allowed out of the village.
Oh, that would be checkpoints writ large, right, Ken? Hey, Ken, yeah. I got the big halftime show coming up, but you can bet that this executive order will be on the top of the card for tomorrow, so maybe you can call back tomorrow, okay?
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Just 6 days to go. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden on the road yesterday, campaigning in Georgia at an event in Warm Springs, promising to be a different kind of leader.
President who is not in it for himself, but for others. A president who doesn't divide us, but unites us. President who appeals not to the worst in us, but to the best.
Biden later addressed about 800 people at a drive-up rally and rap concert in Atlanta. Currently, he has no campaign appearances scheduled today. President Trump has 2 rallies planned for Arizona after rallies in 3 states yesterday, including battleground Wisconsin.
President Trump told rally-goers that he saved Kenosha, Wisconsin earlier this year from rioters when he sent in the National Guard, and said as rare as it was for Wisconsin to go Republican 4 years ago, he's betting they'll do it again, telling the crowd he thinks he has even more support in the state this time around.
If the radical left gained power, it would take them only a matter of months to burn it down, tear it down, or destroy it. I'm the only one standing between you and the left-wing mob.
The Real Clear Politics average of polls in the state of Wisconsin gives Biden a 5.5-point edge.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal, the president, suggesting in a tweet Tuesday that internal polls have him leading in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. An outbreak of looting Tuesday night in Philadelphia during the second night of protests over the police shooting death Monday of Walter Wallace Jr., which District Attorney Larry Krasner says they are investigating.
We are not out to cover for anybody. And we are not out to get anybody. And what that, of course, means is that we have to get all of the information, consider it carefully, find the facts, consider the law, and go wherever they lead us.
Police say they shot Wallace when he charged at them with a knife drawn. His family says he was having a mental health episode. America is listening to Fox News.
Ra COVID-19 reminder na a fan kug binigirdi mag fan ngom ngepin Klitzkie. Fan rakam famiriam kamar weningom positive now. Fan rabalam nagan kei be symptom korap marnangom weningom deng wanage 311 ngan aiweg name fam non kotok tarom. Dam mission ngirigela marom fin man kotofly. Weningom aiweg pin kalapsir ngiringinigirdi nipchur ngom. Mtaya maskrom magflak palafngim kugirdi. Fan rakam nang nbayak marom fakum chukur kuba nbayak marok. Finger himself quarantine magfkeskeng ko COVID-19. PIU ne arayan ngebuchi unga mar ngeriya rodhaif. Pithin ne akayib ko office ko Manyalu nga Micronesian Resource Center nga station ko Choice Broadcasting. Kamgargaif.
The chief executives of the three big tech companies scheduled to testify to a Senate committee today facing potential new regulations.
The Republican-led Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee will question the CEOs of Twitter, Facebook, and Google this morning. The hearing is focused on Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, shielding social media and internet services from being treated as publishers. President Trump and other Republicans are calling for elimination or reforms to the law, accusing tech firms of censorship and algorithms favoring liberal viewpoints. Allegations that grew louder after social media platforms limited access to a New York Post story raising questions about Joe Biden's son Hunter's overseas business dealings. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Hunter Biden's former business partner, Tony Bobulinski, telling Fox's Tucker Carlson tonight he met with the former vice president to discuss a business deal with China.
Hunter and his father in security came through the bar, and obviously I stood up out of respect to shake his hand, and Hunter introduced me as this is Tony, Dad, the individual I told you about that's helping us with the business that we're working on and the Chinese.
Joe Biden has called the reports that his son sold access to him a smear campaign. The National Hurricane Center says Tropical Storm Zeta will be back at hurricane strength by later today when it makes landfall near the Louisiana-Mississippi border. Alabama's Governor John Bel Edwards worried what impact potential storm damage could have on Election Day.
We're communicating with all the power companies where the registrar of voter offices are, where the polling places are, so that they can be first in priority for power restoration so that the election can happen.
The Los Angeles Dodgers have won the World Series, beating the Tampa Bay Rays 3-1 in Game 6. But their third baseman, Justin Turner, was pulled from the game in the 8th inning after testing positive for the coronavirus. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are at the end of that big halftime show that we all have come to know and love so well. The end of another big halftime show means we are now in the second half of Tall Tales. And Dr. Vince Akimoto, a member of the Tall Tales think tank, medical think tank, wants to help us start the second half. So tell me something I don't know, Vince, but remember, I only got an hour left in this show.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it short, but I just received on my smartphone the notice regarding the governor's latest, I guess, proclamations regarding COVID-19 state of emergency, and I'm not sure what to think about it. So it looks a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. They cite a lot of very important facts about the medical reality, but the meat of the matter does seem to be some sort of legal maneuvering to allow, I guess, for more strict enforcement of public health authority. And I'm hopeful that maybe you, as the smartest man on Guam, could help us understand what we as medical professionals can now expect to be telling our patients, because they're reading this as a public health edict or pronouncement, but I'm not exactly sure what it says. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do, Vince. And the word you're looking for there is diktat, D-I-K-T-A-T. If you go back and look at the history of the times leading up to World War II, you'll find the word diktat used quite frequently in the context of Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. But not to say that that's what we've got here, but it's a good word to use. The other phrase that you could have used when you were describing the language in the executive order, a good legal term pronounced hocus pocus.
Hocus pocus.
Hocus pocus. Yeah, it's
so the first one is TikTok, and the second one is hocus pocus.
Close enough. Diktat. Diktat. Yeah.
Sounds like something you couldn't say on radio not too long ago.
That's very true. Yeah. So what it amounts to is this, Vince. According to Title 10, Chapter 19 of the Government Code, which is where all of the governor's magic powers are to be found, she can declare a state of emergency upon making certain findings, declare a state of emergency for 30 days. And at the end of that 30 days, it expires unless she renews it. And she can renew it ad infinitum. And by declaring the state of emergency, she is able to use several of the powers set out in Chapter 19, one of which is that she has the ability to suspend certain regulations. So what she has done in this latest executive order is to extend the emergency for another 30 days to the 29th of November. And then she has also suspended the operation of our administrative adjudication law, which is our major rulemaking engine here. So that if a department wants to make a rule, it has to go through the administrative adjudication law, the end of which is to submit the regulation to the legislature, and if the legislature takes no action on it for 90 days, it is approved. She has taken that out of the game. So in short, she has gathered even more power to herself to govern by executive order. So that's what she's done. And then on the other side, of course, of this story is what the legislature has done, and actually more importantly than that, what the minority of the legislature has done. And I think my faithful companion, Jose, can answer the question. Tell us about what the minority has done, Jose.
They've done a whole lot of do-nothing.
So it's not what they've done.
It's what they are not doing.
It's what they didn't do, yeah. So they're just standing by and letting the governor. I mentioned that a little earlier. It's not that we're looking for a part-time legislature. We don't have a part-time legislature. We've shown that we don't even need any legislature at all. We got a governor that can do it all by herself.
Well, so, I mean, it sounds to me that that's simply a statement of what's been happening to this point, because I've heard a lot of complaining on this particular radio station about the dumbest bunch ever and the do-nothing legislature. So there's been a big movement afoot, I think, to replace them with people. But now it looks like anybody who gets elected senator, at least until November 29th, and then into infinity if the governor sees fit, anybody elected to the legislature really doesn't have anything to do. And wouldn't matter if they did anything anyway, because the governor doesn't have to, sounds to me like she doesn't have to listen to the legislature.
Well, the legislature could take away all of her magic powers by a majority vote. A majority vote on a resolution saying no more special powers, Governor, and she would be like the witch in the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy threw a bucket of water on her. She'd just shrink out of sight, saying, "Oh, you little brat, all my magic powers."
So it's not true then that the legislature has no power. They don't. The governor doesn't have to pay attention to them anymore if she doesn't want to. But the legislature could force a reconsideration of the governor's emergency powers, because they're the policymakers, they're the lawmakers, they control the budget theoretically. But to this point,
well, they have a bigger hammer than the budget, because that Chapter 19 contains the seeds of the revocation of all our magic powers. So it's not that the legislature has a shortage of power. It's the fact that the legislature, at least 5 of them, have a shortage of intestines. And
well, it sounds like you're talking about the minority, the Republican minority, which thus far has not shown any stomach for a fight. But the Democratic majority has, I guess, done their job, which is to do nothing. I mean, both sides are successfully doing nothing to this point. And now the governor's congratulating with them about it and saying, well, I wasn't going to pay attention to you anyway because I've just promulgated suspension of rulemaking, the need for rulemaking so that public health can accomplish whatever it intends to accomplish, which I think it doesn't really say it as I've read it, but the specific punishments people are going to have for violation of the stay-at-home orders, the fines, the I guess jail time, or what exactly public health wants GPD to enforce or to do as punishment, since people apparently are not listening to it being said nicely. Well, I think that's the intent of this whole thing, isn't it?
If you look at what's happened, the government's won-lost record before Judge Iriarty is pretty easy to remember. I don't remember how many the government has lost, but I do remember how many they've won, because they haven't won anything at all. And Judge Iriarty keeps telling me, hey, you guys, you're not doing it right. So there's that. And then a few days ago, Janela Carrera unmuted herself long enough to tell us that they're examining, in light of this McCrout kerfuffle, we're examining ways in which we can enforce the quarantine and isolation regulations. So I suspect this is step 1 in enforcement. And what we'll see next will be exercises in creative rulemaking to see how much authority the governor can take onto herself in the function of rulemaking. I don't think it's going to be pretty.
Right, and then, I mean, the people that are going to have to enforce this are GPD, the officers from GPD, theoretically, and then I would imagine the courts. I mean, if the rules are made by the executive branch, so, for example, that they're going to shut down McCrouts or fine them $10,000 for violation, the court then would be held to that standard. The judge would then have to enforce that, or I mean, how does that work?
Well,
does it sound?
Just speculating what might happen. At the McCrout situation, the easiest way to do it would be to have a regulation that says that the governor, upon finding of egregious violations of the Wuhan rules can suspend or revoke the business license of any operation. So she revokes McCrout's business license, and in order to get it back, more than likely he would be the one that would have to invoke a judicial remedy. I'm just speculating, though.
Yeah, I thought public health had that opportunity to do that because they shut down restaurants for being unsanitary all the time. So it seems like they're creating a different level of enforcement, but it's still similar. I mean, I asked you this earlier in the pandemic. Was this the declaration of a public health emergency and all the different powers that were being invoked, is this the equivalent, or was that the equivalent of martial law or police state? Then you said no, I think, if I remember correctly,
right,
because there was no military component or martial component. But now with the
martial law is limited to cases of invasion, or invasion, maybe a rebellion, but not something like this. Now, police state, you could get to a police state pretty easily if you have a police force and really draconian rules or statutes, et cetera, that allow the police to enforce the right kinds of regulations. And that's something that I think we all need to be a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, just from a medical standpoint, since I supposedly represent that component of society, I do believe that the governor and her team are reacting to the right problem, which is the fact that we have lost control of this public health situation. The hospitals are definitely in a state of great danger to anybody who needs that service. They're definitely doing their best, and I've spoken to patients that are in there right now. They're complimentary of the care that's being received, but the staff is being stretched beyond their capacity, and you get that from the hospital administrator herself. Nonetheless, they do their job. And so when we've talked about heroes in the past, this is the true heroism of going into a situation where, unfortunately, things are not the way they're supposed to be. But that's how war is, and that's how these terrible public health emergencies can be. So if it does take some other form of governance in order to achieve better control, maybe that's the price we have to pay. But really, realistically, I mean, part of the reason our hospital is in this situation, part of the reason public health is in state of array, is because our senators have sat on the side and done nothing when there was so much work to be done. And they, in terms of healthcare, have done nothing to help the hospital get stronger, nothing to help public health be better. And so we are in this situation, and I'm going to make it flat out crystal clear to anybody who's voting that these senators have failed you, and they are asking for your vote very shortly, and you should definitely vote for somebody else. I mean, this is a referendum on bad governance, and if you enjoy being in a police state, if you enjoy a public health emergency where you have to fear for your life, then vote for the people that brought you there, which are all the senators that are asking you for your vote in a very short couple of days. If I were you, I would have voted already. I voted already, and I voted every single one of them out except for Jim Moylan, and I think I can stand that at least that Jim has tried, but he hasn't succeeded, so we'll give him another chance. But
are you
that's the thing.
Are you referring to James Woke Moylan?
Oh, okay. So I mean, maybe you didn't vote for him, but I'll acknowledge that I did vote for him because I'm going to at least give him credit for standing on the side of the road, looking awoke that we needed to do better as a governing society. But the purpose of this call really is to tell people is, look, the governor is doing something that probably would have hadn't been done by any sitting governor looking at the facts, staring her in the face. But the situation has been brought about by poor policies enacted and funded by a legislature that is now seeking re-election. So I don't know if there's any more appropriate. I mean, how could you draw this up any better? If the people of Guam want to continue to live like this, be like this, then feel free to vote in people just like who you voted in last time. Otherwise, you have a great opportunity to flush out the old and bring in the new, just like dirty diapers. So this is I don't know what the right word is for it, but it certainly feels
here it is. Here it is.
appropriate.
Here it is, Vince. There's an old political saying that goes like this: "Turn the rascals out." Good talking to you, Vince.
Have a great day, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, that's Vince Akimoto, Dr. Vince Akimoto, a part of the Tall Tales Medical Think Tank. And I have another distinguished caller here in the green room who we haven't had a chance to chat with for a couple days, so I'm glad to welcome back Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great, Frenchie.
Good. I just wanted to touch on a few things that you talked about earlier with that article from that lady in the PDN, I think, right?
Yeah.
Regarding the explosive number of cases. One thing that came to my attention on Sunday when I was in church was that actually the section of the population that is being hit the hardest at this time are the poorest people of our community, and especially in Jigo, and they are people that live in tenements that are overcrowded, that don't have electrical power, and a lot of time don't even have running water. And it took this administration months and months before finally 2 weeks ago they had to be confronted with the fact that they had not outreached to those people, and this was where and not surprisingly, where in view of the conditions of the way they live, where they are piled on top of each other, they don't have access to the radio, they don't have access to phone, they have access to nothing, and this is where the explosive number of cases really happen. And so, again, like the doctor said, it's bad policies, late reactions, and then in order to compensate for all those bad decisions, finger pointing. Keep on pointing your finger at other people except yourself. This governor is running a way forward with more insane policies as she goes. And frankly, she's threatening to outdo the governor of Michigan as one of the martinets of government in the United States, and she's ridiculous. But then again, she's a mother and a nurse, and so. But the whole routine, and again, the legislature didn't do anything. They could have, like you and Ray pointed to them, what they could do, and they haven't done it. And this is where we are now. So then the other thing I wanted to talk about is something you touched on, I think, on Monday, but I was not available. So, which was that GLBTQ group locally who was criticizing the Archbishop for reminding people, or his flock at least, what marriage really is. And they were taking exception to him reminding people the truth, and they have a big problem with that. But if you look at it, those groups, there was a very, very good 5-minute video that came out from Chadwick Moore from New York, who is a journalist. He's a freelance journalist. You see him a lot on Epoch Times and also on Fox and some of the few news outlets that do really reporting and investigations. Chadwick Moore is an interesting character. Actually, I know his uncle and his father quite well. They're originally from Iowa, and he happens to be gay, and he's also very out conservative. So, which to a lot of people is kind of a misnomer. But what his point was that the Democrats are exploiting the LGBT for political gain. What he calls the Gay Inc. or the LGBT industrial complex, which is made of a lot of groups like HRC, GLAAD, the Victory Rights Campaign, and all kind of groups, that they all support only one cause. It is democratic identity politics. And he's denouncing that, and he's saying, basically, you guys are not representing the gay community, just like the BLM does not represent the African American community. They are very narrow. They have very narrow arguments, and they don't represent anybody at all. You have gay people that are Democrats, some of them are Republicans, some of them are religious, some of them are non-religious, some are young, some are old. There are people from every race and everything. And these small groups, like this one here that was attacking the Archbishop, do not represent the gay community at large. They, in a way, they are like Bevacqua pretending to represent all Chamorros. You know, it's the same situation. They are radical political people that take one identity politic, take it, own it, and use it for their own benefit to make, in many cases, in those non-profit groups, very large salaries where they pay themselves sometimes six figures. And so it's amazing. And that needed to be underlined because you know, you always have those little groups coming out and pretending to represent one group or another, like Bevacqua was the Chamorros, and like this group trying to represent gay people of Guam. It's absolutely ludicrous. Those people don't represent anybody behind the small group of activists that is making a cottage industry out of victimhood politics, and it needs to be denounced. And all the while, and I was all quite riled up with the Pope released that stinking bomb, as he often does in an interview, off-the-cuff interview. Then it's being taken like a football by the running backs in the press, and they go and make all those conclusions. In the meantime, the real Christians are suffering. You know, while we're worried about this epidemic, or this fake epidemic, because if you look, there is a 99% recovery rate, you have the Armenians and other Christian minorities in Armenia right now who are under military assault and threatened of annihilation by the Turks and the Azeris, and the leftover of ISIS that the Turkish government brought from Syria into Armenia and Azerbaijan in order to attack Armenia. And so we have a pope that's starting to put things up in the air and see who grabs it, and at the same time he doesn't do his due diligence protecting the Christian minorities in the East. And this is criminal, just like it is criminal for the Pope to let the Catholics of China at the mercy of the Communist Party of China. This is very, and I'm glad our Archbishop took a stand and made it known that on this subject it was not church teaching, and it was very much off-the-cuff statement. And again, those minority groups are very silent. You know, they take money, they do fundraisings, they take money, and it's always to defend the Democratic Party. But one thing you can be sure, if you have GLBTQ issues in countries like Iran, China, Cuba, Venezuela, or others, they are dead silent. You never hear them going to the defense of GLBTQ in those countries. The only time they can defend the GLBTQ is to further leftist policies in this own country, just like they do in Europe. And it's always pushing identity politics. And we see again that, the Pope is at the center of that. He's pushing a social agenda that has nothing to do with religion. And we've seen it again with this case, and we see it over and over with other cases. He made the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., who was a protege of McCarrick, a cardinal. And the guy everybody in the Catholic community on the East Coast know that this guy is corrupt as Biden is, and this is a pretty tall order. And here we have the Bishop of Rome, who is making him a cardinal, well, this guy is as corrupt as they come, and he has done so much damage, and he has covered up the McCarrick scandal. So here we are, and in our little island, we have little Lou, who thinks she's the Sun King, and she can make diktat like that, like George III, and decide who is doing what, when, and how. And you know, even if we get the rascals out next week, which I hope we do, she still has until the end of January to bother people before the next legislation. If we get a new legislation that will do something, can do something. So we're stuck for another 3 months with this poor excuse of a governor.
But you know, Frenchie, when you come right down to it, as Edmund Burke laid it out, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is that do nothing. So,
do nothing. Yes, absolutely right.
So we gotta keep doing our part. We gotta keep the ball bouncing until we get some people in the government that actually care about being in the government instead of being the government, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Those people are there for self-service, not for serving the citizens of Guam, and it's pretty sad. My tags expire in August. I've been trying to get an appointment at DNV since August. Next week we're in November. I have not been able to get an appointment to get my new tags. I got my insurance, I got my the inspection done, everything. I just need to get an appointment. They cannot even give you an appointment. This is how bad the government is working right now. And they want special powers. They cannot even wipe their own behind.
I'll tell you what you do, Frenchie. I got to go because I got a break coming up here, but get yourself a piece of white cardboard and put Tall Tales on it, and put that where your license plate should be, and no one's going to bother you then, right? Good talking to you, Frenchie.
You take care. Bye-bye.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific, Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app.
Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
You know, from the center field bleachers in Wrigley Field in Chicago, you could see the rooftop of the studio of The Point on Marine Corps Drive and Upper Tumon. It's amazing, but it's the way it works. So we're back here. Seventh inning stretch means we got 2 more innings for another episode of Tall Tales. And the poet laureate of Tall Tales, Andrew Camacho, has chimed in with a little bit of a long poem. And here's what he says. Hey, Tall Tales folks, you may not have heard. the news about Governor Liu. She's under stress and a COVID mess because of Wuhan flu. The forecast numbers were grim, alarming, causing dread. We feared our chances were quite slim with sick and mounting dead. She told us to stay home, you see, to wash our hands with haste. Good little boys and girls were we. We had no time to waste. She closed the roads and scolded those who went out for a drive. We wondered what the matter was, for most people did survive. The curve was flat, the death toll small. Who could ask for more? But who knew that Governor Liu wanted a 2-week zero score? I won't relent. Forget the rent. You'll do just as I say. I will not hear your lame dissent. We're doing things my way. So now, dear folks, it's plain to see the news is not so bad. For after 10 short years, there's no more tears. Empress Liu is no longer mad. The poet laureate of tall tales. Let's give him a big hand. Okay, so here we go. Little final chapter here, or the final 2 innings of Tall Tales. Next item on the card is Liu versus the Treasury. And this is an article that ran in last night's PNC News. COVID bereavement program running out of money. Surprise, who'd have ever thunk it? The COVID bereavement program is running out of money as Guam records 75 deaths.
Did she think it was an incentive?
Maybe. The Wuhan Virus Bereavement Fund is unfortunately getting more interest than expected. As a result, more money has been set aside for the program. The bereavement fund originally had a $750,000 budget. $750,000 to be handed out, $10,000 at a time for the survivors of anybody who died. No, not anybody who died. Anybody who died arguably because of the Wuhan virus. According to Department of Administration Director, he's the Director of Administration, he's not Director of the Department. Director Edward Byrne, another $250,000 was added because it was close to running out of money to make payments. The program pays $10,000 to families for each person who has passed away due to Wuhan virus. The program was opened 2 weeks ago. Since then, Burns said they've received 43 applications and 28 have been approved. 10 are under review and 5 were received but with incomplete documentation. As of yesterday, 75 people on Guam have passed away from the disease. The additional money for the bereavement fund was taken from the CARES Act, specifically from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Although some Wuhan virus relief programs have become rife with attempts at fraud, Burns said that hasn't been the case so far with the bereavement fund because he's not aware of anyone who died just to get the $10,000. Yeah, so big surprise here. We're running out of money. And and of course, you remember the background to this story here. There was a column by Helen Meadowbrook who laid it out in her usual Helen Meadowbrook way, being very straightforward and easily understood. Don't give away money that's not yours. She has a parable here dealing with a child and a silver dollar. And then she goes to former Congressman Davy Crockett, who represented a district in Tennessee in the 1820s. One day, a bill to appropriate money for the benefit of widow of a distinguished naval officer was on the floor. Several supported it, but before the vote, Crockett arose. And he said, I have as much respect for the memory of the deceased and as much sympathy for the suffering of the living as any man in this house. But we must not permit our respect for the dead or our sympathy for the living to lead us into an act of injustice to balance of the living. I will not go into an argument to prove that Congress has no power to appropriate this money. But he went on to say, no public official in any branch of government has the right to give public money to individuals, no matter how sorry she is for a loss of life during a public emergency. And Helen and Davy are exactly right. You know, I'm not a very generous person, I suppose, but I could be a lot more generous than I am if I only had the chance to be generous with somebody else's money. Jose, do you have any money in your pocket?
I have no money in my pocket, but I'm thinking of being generous with this bereavement fund.
Yeah.
Just give it away.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if you could bring a couple $100 tomorrow after the show, we'll go out and find that homeless guy that's always hanging around out in front of the studio, and I'll give him $100 of your money so that he'll recognize how generous I am. That would be a pretty good plan, wouldn't it?
I'm sure he'll be grateful.
Mm-hmm. And he would say, "Oh, Bob is so generous. I never realized how generous Bob was." So that's the trick. If you want people to recognize how generous you are, set yourself up so you can give away somebody else's money. And here's what Lou said in a story that ran on KUAM. Governor established the fund that pays $10,000, a one-time $10,000 grant. And in Lou's release, the governor said too many individuals are facing both the incredible loss and the incredible financial burden associated with losing loved ones. She adds that it was the least she could do to help the families who are in mourning. The least she could do. So, Jose, it's not what the governor did, is it? The governor didn't do anything at all.
It's the least what she did.
The least of what she could do. And unfortunately, that little vignette is a good window into the governor's character. It's not the principle that counts. It's the show that you're able to put on. Oh, here's $10,000. It was the least that I could do. It's the least I could do with somebody else's money. Okay, well, our Keith, what can you tell me that I don't know, realizing we only got about 15 minutes to go?
Oh, nothing that you don't already know, Bob. As a matter of fact, funny thing is, your last 2 minutes, I guess, while I was reaching for the phone and on hold, you pretty much addressed the question I was going to pose. For fear of sounding cold-hearted, but I guess since I'm a conservative, that sort of is assumed anyway.
Yeah.
Why is someone who dies from COVID, why are they considered special and worthy of $10,000, but someone who dies in a car crash, a police shooting, heart attack, toenail fungus, whatever, is not?
Well, that's exactly the point that Lee Weber made before Lou even gave out $1. So he laid the same point out. He laid out how many people die every year, and, you die, you're dead. So why do we make this fuss over those who die over the virus compared to the other deaths, all of which are a tragedy for somebody? And, of course, the bois in the form of Jane Flores came back and took a really hard shot at Lee Weber and accused Lee of being Tai Mamatlo. But unfortunately for Jane, Lee came back and answered that. But it's exactly the point. With $750,000 and the kind of emergencies that we're dealing with, and the kind of situation, you know, like the folks in Zero Down and Gil Baza, who don't even have running water, and that's one of the reasons perhaps that the incidence of the disease is so high there. And we're giving away $10,000 basically for no reason at all, other than it makes the governor feel good, and later on it'll make her look good, because she'll be able to get people to come on camera and say, I'm so grateful to Governor Leon Guerrero, please vote for her. It's all pretty disappointing, Keith.
Yeah, it's pretty cynical, but I can't see any other, I agree with you, I can't see any other way to look at this but as an attempt at appearing, and Democrats are always good at this, appearing to care and buying votes.
Yeah, well, if that's not it, maybe somebody could explain what else motivated that. It's the least I could do, right, Keith?
Yeah, I agree. And this is a curious one. Okay. Well, nice chatting with you, Bob.
Always a pleasure, Keith. Okay, we're going to head down the 7th inning stretch with Guess Who?
Contact tracing is key to containing COVID-19. That's why we're introducing the Guam COVID Alert app. According to Oxford University, for every 100 to 200 downloads of this app, 100 infections can be prevented and 1 life can be saved. Help save a life. Go to guamcovidalert.guam.gov or download the app from the App Store or Google Play now. Add your phone to the COVID fight. Help Guam stop COVID-19.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, home stretch, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and as I'm driving out of Churchill Downs, that's chow call, folks. That means it's time for drive-through Jack, driving through drive-through somewhere, ready for chow, right, Jack?
Yes, I'm ready for chow for supper, as you would call it, and it's I don't know whether to be amused or honored with the chow call, and it just brings back memories of the military.
Be honored, Jack, because you and the most dangerous man in the room are the only 2 callers that have their own theme music, as you were, and the other Governor Leon Guerrero are the only ones that have their own theme music to introduce their calls.
Yeah, speaking of the other Leon Guerrero, is he related to Carlotta?
I don't know if they're related or not, but I think they're brother and sister.
Nice one. You know, that's very nice. That kind of well, first of all, I served in the military with Carlotta's brother Brian, We served at Marsh Air Force Base, and believe it or not, yeah, I remember the chow hall call. And our mess hall at the time was called Vapor Trails. I was in the Air Force, so it's kind of humorous and true. When you ate at the chow hall, you kind of left there with vapor trails.
Yeah, it was kind of tough eating those Air Force mess halls. A lot of times they ran out of lobster, and some of the chefs really can't do a good job with filet mignon. It's a tough life in those Air Force chow halls, right?
Yeah, well, I scored high enough in the ASVAB to have a choice of which breast to get. I'm just joking.
Mm-hmm.
That was a shot across the bow.
Yeah.
I'm just joking, but just a friendly reminder. Today I was off today because they shut off. There's no cemetery service for All Souls Day and All Saints Day, so I took the day off to go visit the church suffering. And I need to remind Catholics that we are the church militant, and we are in communion with the church suffering and the church triumphant. So these are very important days for us. And, just a friendly reminder that some cemeteries will be closed on the 30th, I think, or the 31st. And so just to get out there and do your communion. And I'd just like to remind also people to please dispose of your mask properly. Today, there was a mixture of sunshine and rain, and a lot of times that people don't notice this, but, in warm days and stuff like that, you don't see anything, but as soon as it starts to rain, those masks, they get stuck in the parking lots. They're stuck everywhere, and you see them everywhere now, even in the beaches. And please throw away your stuff, especially those masks properly. Don't throw them out your window or disregard them just because on the sidewalk or something. Please throw them away properly. So I just wanted to mention that those two public services. I also I don't mean to change the subject, but I just want to get your awareness of something. Guam has always been a bellwether place when it came to presidential election, and we failed miserably in 2016. And I was wondering if you noticed the correlation, because that's about the time when the media started showing their true colors, and you had polls being skewed, you had what's supposed to be news articles really are editorials showing up in your front pages rather than being in the editorial section. I was wondering, did you notice that?
I can't say that I did, Jack.
Yeah, so, Guam was a bellwether place for presidential elections, and we were doing very, very well. Of course, we had the typhoon in '96, but and you'll notice it across the board that when the media started swinging left and for the fences, started muting ideas, started, skewing polls, the public bit back, and they bit back hard with President Trump. So, I'm hoping that here in Guam, we could go back on the winning side. And I hope that we win with, even though it's a straw poll, that will show that, we know about our news. We observe the news. We can tell the difference between fake news and real news, between opinions and editorials and real news article, newsworthy article.
Of course, we have an advantage here that they don't have in the mainland, Jack.
Yeah, tall tales. We have tall, and it reaches across the universe.
And the Ray Gibson show, yeah.
I don't know, man. Sometimes Ray, he whiffs at some things when he's up there at the batter box. And I said, why are you swinging at that? But you and I are baseball connoisseurs. Congratulations to the Dodgers. But you and I were racing baseball and stuff like that. And, sometimes
I wash my hands on Major League Baseball, Jack. I have not yet recognized the movement of the Dodgers and the Giants to the West Coast. So when you're talking about the Dodgers, you better say Brooklyn Dodgers.
I say it loud and proud, Brooklyn Dodgers.
But they've
Real
got,
good, Bob.
they've done a lot to ruin the game. This designated hitter thing ruins the game of baseball.
Well, that was the American League, so the National League stayed true. There's purists. But another thing I wanted to mention, I left off the call with Ron McNitch, and he was wondering about ideology here in Guam. And we had this talk years ago when you were in another radio station. You remember Evan Montville Cohen, right?
I do indeed.
Remember? Excuse me?
I do, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So remember when he and Rex Sorensen decided to invest some money, create a liberal network in the States called Air America.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, with Al Franken. He used to be at SNL and then became a senator.
And after Rex and Montville Cohen invested their money in Air America for a while, they were known as the shirtless ones.
Yeah, but they wanted to bring a left wing, a liberal portion to the radio. Mm-hmm. And there's an interview that Evan did, and he was asked the question: you have Republicans and Democrats on Guam. How do you? I mean, here you are starting a liberal network. I mean, are you trying to say something? And he, right there in that interview, he said, yes, we have two parties here in Guam, but really what it is that they're both progressive. So when what's his name, Ron asked about ideology, he got off the plane. I don't know when he got off the plane in the 90s. He recognized there was something different, there's something wrong, and he quit. He quit about, the problem with the legislature is that it's not bicameral. There's no filtering process when it comes to the bills and laws, and that's why everybody looks at things as in the corruption realm.
Let's talk about bicameral legislature tomorrow, okay, Jack? Because you can hear the music coming up. We're 2 seconds away from the end of the show, but thanks for calling, Jack.
Okay, Bob, have a great evening.
All right.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Less than a week left. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump with 3 campaign rallies yesterday, ending in Omaha, where he tried to warm up a crowd.
I think a lot of people out here forgot just how cold they were. A lot of energy from the crowd as President Trump delivered a familiar speech. But Trump also had a very simple message.